We're the Teen Librarians with Arapahoe Libraries, bringing you some recommendations of books we think you might enjoy. We'll introduce ourselves first. My name is Catherine. My pronouns are she and her. And we also have Bridget and Lauren joining us as well. And we will jump right into our book talks today. And my first recommendation is A Song Below Water by Bethany Morrow. I will be honest, I definitely picked this book up because of the cover. It is so gorgeous, but I was not disappointed. The main character is Tavia, and she lives in a world that looks a lot like ours, but there's magic, and she is a siren, much like Greek mythology sirens, if you know the story, the mermaids who can lure men with their voices. And in the world where she lives, it is illegal to be a siren. It's considered dangerous because these sirens could potentially manipulate you and make you do horrible things. And so she has to keep her identity a secret. She also has an adoptive sister named Effie, who we don't actually really know what she is as the story goes. And that's part of the mystery that's unfolding, is what is Effie? She's really good at swimming. Sometimes her skin sheds off, which is a little weird. And so they're trying to figure that out. This one, I highly recommend it. It reminded me a bit of stories like The Hate You Give, but with mermaid lore mixed in. And the character of Tavia, the author actually said, is specifically a commentary on the experience of what it's like to be a Black woman in our society. And it is actually, as much as it seems unlikely for a mermaid story, is a really stark commentary on systemic racism in our society. It was unexpected. I highly recommend it.
The first book I'm going to talk about is called FURIA, and it is a really amazing book that has soccer mixed in with, it's set in Argentina. There's a lot of culture, especially kind of a woman or female's place in a household is also talked about quite a bit. So while it's really fun, a soccer book, there are a lot of topics that are discussed that are pretty deep as well. And it's about Camellia and how much she lives a double life. She loves soccer. She wants to play it, but to her parents, especially her father, soccer or football is actually for males only. And that is what her brother does. Her brother's a pretty big soccer player. But what they don't know is that she is also a soccer player. Camellia is on a pretty well-known team. She keeps herself hidden. She's called Furia when she is on the field, and she is very fierce. She is a really good team player. She's really good at the sport itself. And so this is her story of kind of how she sneaks on the bus to get to the practices, what she kind of tells her parents, and what her goal is she hopes to tell them one day when they win, because if she wins, she has the chance of getting a scholarship. She's always wanted to go to the United States for college. She's one of the only soccer players that speaks English, so a lot of times she has to avoid the media and stuff who want to interview her because she speaks English so well. So it's her story of kind of being torn between these two lives. And she has a friend that she has known forever too, and they kind of hit it off in a different way as they grow up. They have this romance started, but he kind of wants to live the life of the soccer kind of excitement, and kind of wants to put her to the side. So it's an interesting story of her sticking up for herself and different things like that. So if you want a story mixed with soccer and this culture that is just beautiful, I really enjoyed hearing about Camelia's life, but also the struggle is definitely there as well, then Furia is a really good one for you.
So my first book is Hearts Unbroken, and this one is about Louise, and she is a member of the Muskogee Creek Nation, and she is in high school. She's a senior. She's going into her senior year when she breaks up with her first kind of real boyfriend, because he says some kind of racist stuff. So she breaks up with him, and she's not super cut up about this. She's like, all right, it's my senior year. Things are going to go really nicely. It's fine. And then her school is casting for The Wizard of Oz. That's the play that the theater kids are doing. And if you're into theater, you might be into this book. I enjoyed a lot of the themes run around the theater part. Her younger brother ends up getting cast as the Tin Man, and it kind of blows up at the school because the educator who's running the play has done sort of colorblind casting. She has cast whoever she thought was best for the role, regardless of their race. And this is in this town in Kansas that's predominantly white, and a lot of the parents and a lot of the students kind of get bent out of shape about this, and they start the play becomes this sort of flashpoint in the town. And so suddenly Louise is kind of navigating that. Her family is navigating that. Her brother is dealing with it. And there's this guy at school that she's starting to maybe there's some romance going on. This one is a good choice if you are looking for something that does have that realistic real life feel to it, but that kind of blends together humor and a little bit of drama. I use that word with the theater part of it. It's really entertaining, and it's one that I think you can pick up and enjoy, and it is standalone, which is really nice.
My second recommendation is a book that will leave you not just hungry, but starving because of there's so many delicious food descriptions. It's called Salty Bitter Sweet by MUIR Cuevas. And it is the story of Isabella, who is half French and half Cuban, and she dreams of being a professional chef. And she has received this rare opportunity to have this summer apprenticeship in France with a Michelin-starred chef. And she's so excited about this. She sees this as her chance to launch her career at a very young age. But things are not necessarily going according to plan. She's having to spend this summer with her father and her new stepmother, who she only recently acquired after she discovered her parents were having, her dad was having an affair. And so she's dealing with some of this family drama. And as you might imagine, it is distracting her a little bit from the concentration that she needs for this highly competitive chef school. I loved the descriptions of food in this. It kind of felt like an episode of Cutthroat Kitchen at points, with the different kids competing for the top spot of this apprenticeship through the weeks of the workshop that they were doing. It is such a fun story. There's also some romance and some kind of family healing and other stuff that happens. Definitely on the lighter side, that salty bitter sweet.
The next one I'm going to talk about is Charming as a Verb, and it is definitely a fun romance that has some serious elements. Henry and obviously his graduating class are graduating soon, so they're applying for schools and different things. But I really loved Henry as a character. He is really funny. He's very charismatic and just really is fun-loving. Everyone really likes him. And he starts this kind of dog walking business, and I put that in quotes because he's technically the only one that runs it, and it's a really hilarious story about how he started it and things. But he tends to convince people that they should let him walk his dog and pay him for it because he loves dogs. He loves kind of that challenge that he gets with adding another thing to his busy life. He does go to a very prestigious academy where he's kind of expected to be the best. He is the first generation Haitian son of his family, and so his father really expects next level. They expect him to go to Columbia University. That's his goal, and so he is trying to figure out senior year what he could do to kind of increase his chances, like saying he has a business and things like that. So while there is a lot of humor, there is a lot of really deep conversation about being that first generation son and kind of the responsibility that is landing on him. But he hasn't convinced everyone about his business. There's one of his neighbors that his mom wants her to walk the dogs. And so Corinne is kind of questioning him, like, so you're the only one that walks them and things like that. And through that, it kind of becomes this blackmail. She wants to become more popular. So Henry starts taking her to different parties and things to kind of introduce him to people to keep the secret of this dog walking business. So there's definitely parts that make me laugh out loud. And there's also parts that get really serious as they're applying for these schools, getting the results back and things like that. It's definitely a really good story about your senior year, kind of trying to build that resume with the experience that you have. I really enjoyed it. So that's Charming as a Verb.
Okay, and so my next book is a graphic novel, and it's called Sleepless. It's by Sarah Vaughan. And this one, I really loved the art style in particular. It's gorgeous, and the story is fantasy, but it's sort of inspired by like the Moroccan and Italian Renaissance era. You can kind of tell from the gown. And then the main character, Poppy, is a not quite princess. She's the illegitimate daughter, the only child of this king who dies, and the king's brother takes the throne and wants Poppy kind of under his eye because he doesn't want her to kind of make a move for the throne. She's not interested in it, but she suddenly gets sort of swept up into these court politics, and it follows her and her bodyguard. She has this bodyguard who's one of the Sleepless, and Sleepless they sort of trade sleep. So they no longer sleep. They are awake all the time, which makes them a very good bodyguard. And it means that at some point they end up essentially falling into a permanent sleep where all of that lack of sleep catches up to them and they essentially sleep forever after that part, kind of die. So she and her bodyguard are trying to navigate the kingdom, figure things out. She has a pet fennec fox who's adorable. This story kind of blends sort of romance and spies and murder all together. It's gorgeous. And it's the first of two. There are two books in the, I guess, that you read to get the full story. But if you just read the first one, it doesn't leave you totally bereft. And I highly recommend these, and I think you should give them a try if you are looking for a graphic novel that is not superhero length, where you have like 40 books to read. This one's nice and concise.
My last recommendation is a bit heavier, I would say. It is called Punching the Air by Ibi Saboy and Yusuf Salam, who's one of the exonerated 5. And it's a novel in verse, and it kind of is semi-autobiographical for Yusuf. He wanted to share sort of his experience, what it was like being wrongfully incarcerated. And so the story follows Amal, who has been wrongfully imprisoned for a violent attack against a kid that he didn't do, but he's been sent to prison. And the only person who can exonerate him is the kid who was actually attacked, who's in a coma. So he has very little hope of actually being cleared and ever being free again. And so this tells the story of the realities of what it is like to be in a system designed to strip you of your humanity, which does sound really bleak, I know, but it's also a story of hope. Through his time in the detention facility, he discovers art and poetry, and he starts to find his passion and his love. And I will spoil a little bit. It's a hopeful story. It doesn't end on a bleak, dark note. And I'll leave it there. I highly recommend it. It's beautifully written, and I highly recommend the audiobook as well if you like to listen to books.
The last one I'm going to talk about is by Jessica Young. It's called Shine. And it's a realistic story about trying to get into the world of K-pop. This is not something that I was familiar with at all, but Jessica Young was in a K-pop group, and so it's kind of her firsthand experience. It's not about her story exactly. She has changed the characters quite a bit, but I will tell you it's super fun, but it also does have a lot of different deep conversations about like eating disorders, looking the part. A lot of them have surgeries for kind of being the person that they want to be for their K-pop group and things like that. So I will warn you up front about that it does get into some deeper topics. But if you like K-pop, I think you'll really enjoy this story. And she is trying to become a big star. She will be in a group, and she started at 11 when this group kind of came up to her and said, do you want to join? Her name's Rachel Kim, and she is working with DB Entertainment to kind of be the next star. And it kind of fast forward, you get glimpses of her kind of career. She's now 17 though, and kind of her eyes are being opened by the different groups and how they're treated, males versus females. She's starting to fall for a really popular male star, and kind of when they're together, kind of the tension that builds and how they can't be seen together, and all these things are starting to happen, and kind of the fallout of what that looks like for a male versus a female in K-pop. The way they describe how they are together in the house as a group is really interesting. They appear very close and fun-loving together, but the house, like essentially like with siblings, it's not always perfect, right? There's like these little arguments and different things that are happening. And so if you want kind of behind the scenes look about K-pop and being in a group and the fun and the downsides of it, I highly recommend Shine by Jessica Young. It is very good.
Okay, so the last one that I'm going to talk about is Gideon the Ninth, and it's the first in a series. Harrow the Ninth just came out, and Alecto the Ninth will be out at some point. These are some of my favorite books from the past while, and these are books written for an adult audience. So no going in that is something to be aware of. There's more profanity and more violence than you would find in most books written for a teen audience, but the main characters are 18 and 17. And this book, the tagline on the cover is something like lesbian necromancers in space, which is a very apt description, but this book combines sort of a locked room murder mystery. It combines necromantic magic where you raise the dead, and it combines spaceships and sword fighting. All of these things together. The main character, Gideon, is sort of a foundling who's been raised by the ninth house, which is a house of necromancers. So Gideon's not a necromancer. She is a swordswoman. And the other main character, her sort of counterpart, is Harrowhark, who is a necromancer. And the two of them essentially are paired up and sent off to a competition where there are necromancers from 9 houses competing with their basically swordsperson bodyguard. They're called a cavalier, and they are stuck together in this one kind of crumbling old mansion, and they are supposed to complete tasks or a quest, and then necromancers start turning up dead, and it turns into this like, what's happening, what's going on. This book is really funny. It is really dark. It is also extremely violent. It very much falls into that horror thing. There's the way people die. These are necromancers who can manipulate bodies and things. There's exploding body horror all over the place, but it's really funny. So it's something that is unique and different, and it's one that if you have any interest in like any piece of it, you would probably be really into it. Gideon's voice, she's the one telling the story, and she is funny. She is extremely funny. Sometimes she's dumb, sometimes she's crass, and it's one that you pick it up and you just kind of keep going and you don't want to put it down. So again, beware of those warnings. It's going to be more violent and it's going to be more profane, but if those aren't things that kind of are no-goes for you, this book would be a really entertaining and fun read.
All right, those are all of our recommendations for this month. We hope you found something that piques your interest and has you excited to check out. We hope to see you again soon, and we will be coming back to you later this year with more recommendations. Have a great day, everyone.